He is one of the Democratic lawmakers in Texas who left the state as part of a strategy in this special legislative session. He is now in quarantine in the nation's capital. We are joined in today's KSAT Q&A by State Representative Trey Martinez Fischer. Thanks so much for being here. We have a lot to talk about with what's going on with the Democratic delegation right now, but I want to start with your situation. You are in quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19. Tell us how you're doing right now. How are things going?
Thank you, Myra. I'm feeling fine. I have a low-grade fever. I was, pretty surprised to know that I tested positive. I was the guy wearing the mask on the last day of the legislative session. I woke up Sunday, had my normal routine, drank my coffee. I exercised, did some yoga, and then I have a standing meeting with my staff, and we always rapid test before the meeting. And I was really shocked to learn that I was positive. I waited 15 minutes, took another test, and lo and behold, positive again. So I'm isolated and quarantining, and I'll shift my business virtual until I can get out of this.
But you are vaccinated. I want to point that out as well.
Well, fully vaccinated, and I guess really goes to show you how strong that Delta variant is. And for folks that are still on the fence, haven't made that decision to get vaccinated, it is real. I've talked to people who had COVID without the vaccine. They were miserable. I didn't want to get COVID. I didn't plan to get COVID, but now that I have it, this is the way I want to have it, with a low-grade fever and just, minimal symptoms.
Yeah, glad you're doing well. Let's shift to the voting. You left the state of Texas and headed to D.C. because of the voting changes that are potentially going to be put in place. The Senate has already passed their version of it. The House version, seems to be shifting here and there. Are you getting any indication, or do you have any hope that you're going to change any minds when it comes to the Republicans in the state legislature?
Well, Steve, that was the whole point why we left. We were told that they would work with us. We tried to find some common ground. The provisions they had taken out dealing with souls of the polls and the election fraud language, that they didn't take that out because they wanted to. They took it out because they had to. Too much public pressure, too much scrutiny from the press. There's some really bad language in there. That current proposal will give a partisan poll watcher more power at an election box than the election judge. If you can just think about that for a minute, that you could have a Proud Boy, if you will, very partisan, very aggressive, and the minute the election judge tries to bring in order, that election judge, him or herself, could face a criminal penalty.
This move by Democrats, it's certainly come under fire. There's been a lot of criticism from some people who have said, well, this is a dereliction of duty, deciding to leave the state during a special session. What's your response to people who see this move in that way, and how do you hope this will actually make progress?
Myra, that's a great question. Their issue is not with me. Their issue is with the Texas state constitution. The language of the quorum was built into our Constitution by our framers for a reason. They expect to have, a 2/3 present and working, and any short of that, there will not be any business. And it's ironic that there is criticism, because up here in Washington, you have Senator Lindsey Graham talking about breaking quorum to prevent the infrastructure package of the $3 trillion. So listen, it's a tool in the tool bucket. Both sides use it when they need to. And for voting rights, it was necessary.
You brought up the poll watcher deal. The current language that I've seen basically gives, you get warned once, and then the judge can take action to have somebody removed, no matter what political persuasion they are. We talked to Representative Steve Allison last week. He thinks that there's room for negotiations and some room for compromise. Are you getting any indication? Are you talking at all with the Republicans right now on what that compromise may look like?
I have not talked to anybody. Steve Allison's a fine fellow, a really nice guy. Obviously not in the control of that voting rights discussion. That'll lie with Chairman Ashby and members of that select committee. And frankly, look, the proof is in the pudding. If they have ideas on how they would make that improvement, they can easily submit that into drafting. They can send us the language and we can talk about it. And that doesn't change whether we're in Austin or in Washington, D.C. But really, I think it's they have to show a little bit of good faith. They didn't show any at the committee process. The committee went 24 hours straight. They rushed this out in a vote. They didn't take a single amendment. They refused to offer Democrats an opportunity to provide language. That's not how the legislative process works. That's how people get steamrolled. That's not democracy. And that's why we stood up.
I think that this, for so many people who aren't familiar with all the tools in the toolbox, as you called them, this is such an interesting Democrats like yourself back here to the Capitol in Texas. Any idea how long you all are expecting this to last? How long is this going to be the play?
Our group is committed to killing the first called suppression session that we are in, and that ends on August 7th. We will remain here in Washington, D.C. We recognize that the eyes of the nation are on us. We have bumped voting rights up to the top of the domestic policy agenda. We have a lot of encouragement from folks across several different states. Make no mistake, this is happening in Arizona, in Georgia, and Florida. Very recently, there was some suppression legislation passed in Michigan. We need to rise up and rally the nation in hopes that the U.S. Senate will hear us. They are deadlocked at 50-50, and already we are beginning to learn that there may be multiple pathways to put a voting reform package, either in its own version or perhaps in the infrastructure bill that will pass by reconciliation.
Texas Tribune wrote something similar to what Myra was asking you about today, that basically you need the attention of not just Texans, but the nation on what you guys are trying to do there, trying to get Congress to take action because you're fearful of what may happen in the state legislatures, not just Texas, but the other ones that you mentioned. Do you agree with that if the attention wanes, it may be time to come back to the state?
Steve, the one thing I really need is to be home with my wife and children, be back at my job, be in my community. But the fact remains that Republicans have refused to negotiate. We do not need the attention. The attention has come to us. This was a pretty bold and defiant act of minority voices standing up and pushing back in an effort to save our democracy. And so, make no mistake, everywhere we go, every meeting, if you can just imagine in a span of 27 hours, this group had several visits with multiple United States senators, a private meeting with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, an unscheduled 90-minute meeting with the Vice President of the United States. That doesn't happen in a normal day in Washington, D.C. People could spend weeks up here and not have that kind of access. I mean, we're here on a mission. And make no mistake, there is not a lot of advocating in the U.S. Senate for fair voting rights in the state of Texas. Our senators don't agree with our position. And it's incumbent on us to convince the Senator Mansions and the Senator Cinemas of the world that the hurdles and the tripwire are very significant in Texas. And in many instances, voting is become almost, a criminal act if you don't do it by the book.
All right, before we let you go, I think they call it in the legislature a point of personal privilege. I want to give you right now. You have friends and family and one very special family member that I know you wanted to get a message across to here in San Antonio. So I want to let you do that.
Thank you, Steve. Our baby, Camila, going to have a big birthday on the 22nd, and Dad really wanted to be with her. Dad is not going to be with her, and it's one of the biggest cracks in my heart. But Dad's out here working, doing everything I can to do what's best for our country and our democracy. So Cameron, I hope you have a wonderful birthday. When I come home in August, we're going to celebrate it one more time. Daddy loves you.
We wish her a happy early birthday. We wish you well, too, in your own quarantine. Hope you continue to feel well. Representative Trey Martinez Fischer, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.